It is a stark reminder of how far we have come as women, and from being sort of the mastheads to now the creators of these aircraft and the maintainers of these aircraft and the pilots of these aircraft. So yeah, it is a reminder of those days and also of the women who came before us and all the barriers they broke, and then still a reminder of how far we have to go.
From NCPR, welcome to Northwards. People, ideas, and conversations from and about Northern New York, Vermont, and beyond. I'm Mitch Teich.
Support for the Northwards podcast comes from the J.C. Steiniger and M.E. McDonald Charitable Fund at Adirondack Community Foundation in support of the Adirondack Community Foundation, building stronger Adirondack communities. I've seen the rains down in Africa.
I think it's I bless the rains down in Africa.
Whatever, I don't care. I hate that song.
How could you hate Africa by Toto? It's such a non-hateable song.
It's a bad song.
I don't know what it's like getting at, but
even the guys in Toto don't like that song.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Huh.
Would you?
Well, I would resent it being the only one that people ask for when people could just as easily be asking for Rosanna.
Which is a much better song.
My personal favorite Toto song, Hold the Line.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Name one other Toto song.
Africa.
You already named that.
Rosanna.
You already named that.
I'm all out of Toto songs.
That's how I knew you were going to say Hold the Line. I was just having this conversation with my girlfriend, Erin, because she had the song Cherry Pie by Warrant stuck in her head.
Yeah, name another song by Warrant.
Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Really?
That's it. That's all I know.
Based on the Harriet Beecher Stowe novel.
I believe so. Yes. Well, what else would it be based on?
I don't know. Maybe one of them had actually an Uncle Tom.
I don't think so. I was just
they lived up here. That'd be Uncle Tom's camp, I guess.
I was just having this conversation with Erin about Warren's Cherry Pie, and because she has it, I was complaining to her. I had some song stuck in my head, and she was like, "Oh, I've got Cherry Pie stuck in my head." I was like, "You? Why? You don't listen to hair metal? What's that all about?"
Yeah, what was it all about?
She was watching some show, and that song was in it. Anyway, I was telling her about this clip that of what's the new dude's name? Janie Lane. Janie Lane, God rest his soul, no longer with us. Very tragic. But there's this clip that is pretty famous of him complaining on VH1's Behind the Music about how the album that Cherry Pie appears on was done. It was called Uncle Tom's Cabin. And the single for it was everything was all set. And then the record label guy called him and said, "We need a single. There's no single on this record. We need a song like Love in an Elevator by Aerosmith," right? And so Janie Lane says that he wrote that song in a night and then gave it to the band and they finished it up. And then suddenly he says the record label tells him, "Okay, the single is Cherry Pie. The record is called Cherry Pie." He's like, "I'm doing cherry pie eating contests." And he's like, "I'm the cherry pie guy." And he's like, "I hate myself for having written that song." And for a while, I thought to myself, I know where he's coming from. Yeah, that song kind of sucks. I would hate for that to be my legacy. But then I was thinking about it in a different way.
But would Warrant have a legacy at all if it weren't for that song?
They would have a much smaller legacy, but also think about it in a different way. Like the number of people who come to see you play because you put that song out, you wouldn't be on their radar anyway. That song is silly and it's goofy, but a lot of people like it, and it gives them a lot of joy to listen to and to sing along with.
And it could very well have put his kids through college.
Yeah, exactly.
Provided he had any kids and
bought
they
him
went
a
to
house,
college.
bought him a car, set him up for life, basically. And so I get there's songs that my band wrote that I don't want to play anymore. But if they became a giant hit on the scale of Cherry Pie, I would just say, you know what? The people want to hear it. It's 3 minutes of my life. I'm going to do it. It's fine.
Well, it's 3 minutes of your life every night while you're on tour. But even that, 3 minutes out of how many? 1,440 minutes in a day, right?
How many people in the history of humankind have the chance to create something that when they perform it publicly, 10,000 people are singing it back to them? Yeah. That is a huge honor. And Janie Lane had a whole bunch of other issues, I'm sure. I just think that if I had a hit like that, I don't know that I would have the same sort of...
It's not the worst cross to bear.
It's not the worst cross to bear. It's not so bad. What are you thinking about?
Well, I was thinking about Africa mainly because of the book I'm reading right
Oh.
now, which actually plays somewhat into today's segment. But the book I'm reading right now is called West with the Night. It's by a woman named Beryl Markham, who
Okay.
we are not interviewing because she died in the 1980s, I
It'd be a
think.
little difficult.
And she was she was a historic aviator,
Mm-hmm.
among other things, who grew up in Africa and wrote this really amazing memoir. And I was thinking about it because I seem to be drawn to African memoirs for some reason.
You've read several?
Yeah, I have read several. One of them was called "Don't Let's Go to the Dogs Tonight" by a woman named Alexandra Fuller.
What a
Who,
great title.
yeah, it had, it's been a while since I've read it, but it refers to something that someone said. As she grew up in Africa,
Mm-hmm.
She became like an essayist and a novelist, and I think she lives in Wyoming now. But her memoir, that one in particular, she had a series of African memoirs about her childhood. But that kind of opened my eyes to the whole genre of narrative nonfiction, as opposed to autobiography
Sure.
or biography.
Yeah.
It was just sort of it opened my eyes to the idea that someone could write a story of their life that felt like
Like a novel. Yeah.
or at least use some of the same trappings of a novel. And I actually had the really, really good fortune to get to interview her on stage in Milwaukee a few years ago. And I came out of that thinking, this is the most glamorous woman who has ever lived. And not glamorous. She wasn't dressed fancily. There was something about her
Yeah.
bearing that was. It wasn't even regal necessarily, because
But
she's
she was
very down to
glowing.
earth. But yeah, she really was. It tickled me to no end to get to share the same stage with her.
Yeah.
Especially given how much I loved her book.
Mm.
And then during COVID, this is the point at which, if I have family members, they will be rolling their eyes. But I read this book called No Picnic on Mount Kenya, which was the memoir of this guy he was an Italian soldier who was in a POW camp in Africa in Kenya, after Ethiopia fell to the Axis. And he and a couple other people hatched this plan. They didn't want to escape for good because they were in the middle of nowhere. But they could see Mount Kenya from their camp. And the only map they had came off the side of a box of produce or something. But they had to sort of take it for granted that it had some accuracy. And their idea was they were going to escape long enough to climb the mountain, and then they were going to come back, which felt like a metaphor for what we were all living through, where we were just basically stuck in our houses, and you took whatever little bit of freedom that you could get. Anyway, so I went off. I did this interview for today's show with a group of people at an organization in northern Vermont called Habitat for Aviation.
Okay.
And the woman who we're eventually going to hear, Beth White, who founded the organization, and the project they're doing, which is called Women Build Planes. She was inspired to kind of pursue her own aviation dream after reading this book, West with the Night.
Cool.
And she mentioned it, and there are a million copies of it out there, and I found a used copy. It was published in like 1936, and I found a used copy for a couple of bucks, and decided to just see what it was like. And it is very much like those first two memoirs that I mentioned. It is beautifully written, and in a way that I guess I did some research, and there was some question about whether she actually wrote it, and which was based in some stereotypes, and I'm sure misogyny and chauvinism, and
sounds about right.
And I think the evidence is out there that she very much did write this book. But it's I'm like halfway through it, and it's really I love a memoir that really does like open a window into another place and time and a lived experience, and just this idea that we're all like bearing witness to something that happened to a real person, or something that a real person made happen, which is kind of what we do with this show. I mean, that's the really cool thing about this show, is getting to talk to people about what they do. We're not interviewing people about topics, or interviewing them about themselves,
about their life,
through the lens of a topic. So let me share how I found out about this story,
Please.
which is both really interesting and really mundane. We got a donation here at NCPR from somebody who lives in Swanton, Vermont.
Okay, never been there.
You might have been there. You might have driven right through there, because it is right across the lake from Rouse's Point.
Okay, so I've been through there.
Yes.
But I've not been to there.
Well, but of course, I didn't think I had been there, because I didn't know where Swanton, Vermont was.
Sure.
So I was just in the process of signing thank you notes to people, and I saw Swanton, Vermont, and I'm like, I wonder where that place is. And so I, as you have just recently done with Warrant, I Googled Swanton, Vermont, and one of the first things that popped up was a link to this organization called Habitat for Aviation. And I said, and I quote, "What's that?"
And what is it?
And I went down the rabbit hole. So it is an organization that was founded, as you will hear in the series of interviews we're going to hear in just a minute, to get more girls and young women interested in the trades, specifically in this case in building and repairing airplanes.
Yeah, it's not that they're just learning to fly or to become pilots. It's that they're getting down to the nuts and bolts, literally.
Literally, exactly.
How long is it going to take them to build? This is a single engine plane?
This is a single engine plane.
And they're building the engine too.
I believe they are building they're building the engine, they're building the wings. They're, while I was there on a recent Sunday, they were putting the rivets in the wings.
Okay, so how big is this group of women?
It's anywhere from, there's a core group probably in the teens, but there are every
It
woman.
fluctuates.
Yeah, it fluctuates. There are probably, 40 or 50 who have been a part of it, and everyone who does anything to help build this plane gets to sign inside the wing.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And
so it's like a group of 40 to 50 women who are rotating in and out, and every week, every month,
they work on it once a week.
Okay.
On Sundays at the airport in Franklin County, Vermont, not Franklin County, New York, but Franklin County, Vermont, which is not that far from Franklin County, New York. And there are girls as young as 10 or 11 who are working on this. And
so it's multi-generational.
Multi-generational. The idea again is to help young women go into the trades. And there are some mentors from a number of aerospace companies in the region. And there's this really amazing woman who was behind it all, who we're going to meet in just a few minutes. But first, I wanted to share a little bit about why this is so important to the people who are doing the riveting. And we're going to meet 3 of them here in this little montage, starting with...
I'm Emma, I'm 26, and I'm a mechanical engineering student at UVM. This is my second try at college. I went to Champlain College for psychology, and it didn't work, so now I'm here learning to build things, and hopefully I'm going to be an airline or a corporate pilot later. So it was actually at my old job. I ran a coffee shop, and Cliff, our head A&P, came in, and I have a flannel and a hat that has like a million planes on it, and he saw that and he was like, "Do you want to come build a plane with a bunch of other cool women?" And I was like, "Yes, Cliff, I do." But I was working all the time and I couldn't go, so eventually when I went back to school, I then had my Sundays free, and now I come here. I also, I'm going to school for engineering. I really love learning how things work. I love working with my hands. I am starting to do a lot of my own work on my car, et cetera, and it's really, I don't know. I've always loved working with my hands. It's something that is really important to me, and knowing how things go together makes you appreciate them all the more when you are driving them or piloting them. Habitat for Aviation is really so great for any, working with your hands type of interest, because we have girls here that aren't necessarily into aviation, or they don't want to be pilots, or they don't, but it's, if they like working with their hands, if they want to go into automotive. One of my best friends who goes here is wants to work in like F1, and it's just a really empowering experience to work with other women and to see that there are people that look like you that want to do the same things as you do, and to just like lower that barrier of entry. When I came here, Axley, who is 11 but was 10 then, was the one who taught me, and she's like, oh yeah, do you want to like drill this out and buck a rivet? And I'm like, I have never touched that, but yes, please. And it really is like, oh, I can do it, So it's really inspiring. There is a realization to be made by, the ones with privilege in our society, and that includes me, because I'm white, and it's like we have to realize the privilege that we have. And I think there's sometimes this thought of like, not wanting to be, oh, why does it have to be a women only build? Why is it, why can't other people join? And it's really kind of a question of like, when you're a man, it's like any space is welcoming to you. Any space is made for you. And, for women and for other minorities, that's not necessarily the case. And so having spaces where they are made for, for us, and specifically for us, is, I think, really, really important. No offense meant, of course. I just, it's something that is really important. That's why we have women's running groups or women's yoga groups or women's any sort of thing. It's like, it's just a really important space to have, a space that is made for us, not a space that we are borrowing that's made for someone else, like what the whole world feels like it is,
I think we need the
My name is Aubriana Mayette. I am from Sheldon, Vermont, and I'm 18 years old.
And you were born and lived the first part of your life in Messina, New York.
Yes, I did, till I was 11 years old.
And you are about to start college next fall at Clarkson University.
I am for aerospace engineering. I start in fall of 2026, and I'm class of 2030. I first got introduced into aviation from a Black Hawk helicopter landing in my soccer field, and took my GRTC class up. And I was like, oh, this is just a beautiful view. It was my first flight ever as well. Never been on any type of aircraft, and I was just really enjoying it because I didn't really expect to be living in it. I first heard of Habitat for Aviation as I was a contestant in Miss Vermont. My mom was like, hey, there's a bunch of girls building. I know you just had this flight. It might be something you're interested in, and also you're supporting women. So I was like, yeah, I'll check it out. I came in, thought I would just be kind of in the background observing, and one of the instructors came up to me and she goes, here is a drill gun and here is a rivet. And I looked at her, I'm like, you're crazy. I don't even know how to drill straight. And they taught me how to do it, and the minute I pulled that rivet correctly, I got hooked. I said I would be back next Sunday, and it came to next Sunday, and the next Sunday, I was teaching what I learned to other students. And I want to say that's really what got me hooked, was teaching other people and mentoring and just taking that in. Like, I just learned this skill a week ago, and now I'm teaching someone else how to do it. If I was not in Habitat for Aviation, I would not be in this type of trade at all. And that's kind of sad to say. Being in automotive, there's been definitely days that I've sat with just a bunch of 14 guys just doing their thing and being guys. And of course, they make snarty remarks. And I've had days where like, am I doing the right thing? Am I going to be okay in this field? And I come back here and I'm like, I am doing the right thing, because I'm teaching 9-year-olds how to rivet. I'm teaching them how to create a plane. And most importantly, I'm creating a community here. And coming back here, me and my mom always say it's my purpose. Beth has been there since day one with my education, and through medical issues, finance issues, anything, and even like times that I've just been down in the dumps, they have always been there. To have not only one person, but a team of girls and a team of women to support that, I mean, you can't get more of a community in that. So it's kind of like more of a safety place, a secure blanket.
I'm Zoe Broski. I kind of lead marketing and photography and videography here at Habitat for Aviation. I have actually a kind of interesting story. So I come from a family of aviators. My dad is a pilot, my grandpa's a pilot. My grandpa actually went to Top Gun school. That's a real thing. And he flew F-16s. My dad flew KC-135 Stratotankers. He was a refueler. And I never thought that I would ever be in aviation ever in my life. And I didn't get into it until age 22. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that when I was a kid, I never met any of my dad or my grandpa's coworkers that were women. They were all men. And I thought that if I was to get into aviation, I would be a flight attendant because that's the only role that I ever saw women portraying in aviation. So I never really got interested in it in high school, and I ended up going to college for accounting because it seemed like a safe degree. I quickly found out that that was not my passion and that was not what I was meant to do. So at age 22, I was a little lost, and my dad knew Beth White and thought, you should go talk to Beth. She seems like a pretty cool person. You seem lost. She seems like she has direction for you, so go hang out with her. So I did, and she told me that she wanted to start this really cool project that would get more women into aviation. And I thought, oh, that's badass. I want to be a part of that project. And I had photography and videography as a kind of side hustle hobby. And so I proposed doing that sort of thing for Habitat. And I started part-time, and now I've been working for Habitat for about 2 years full-time. Beth was actually the first female pilot I had ever met, even though I grew up in aviation. I think it is absolutely important to have an environment for women to explore these types of interests. There are girls who come in here who have never used duct tape in their life, and they don't know how to rip duct tape. That is not their fault. They were never taught that. Oftentimes, a lot of girls will hold the flashlight for their dads and have their brothers be asked to use the tools when they're kids. You know, they never got the access to learning how to do that sort of thing. So here we're teaching those skills very early on. We have one girl, actually we have two girls here, one's 10 and one's 11, and both of them can weld. And they weld these little sculptures. One of them gets commissions from their classmates to do that, which is so crazy. Imagine a 10-year-old welding. I wish I could have had that sort of opportunity. So it's a really magical place for so many of these women to build these really essential skills and learn to work with their hands and build that independence that they wouldn't necessarily be able to learn anywhere else.
You heard from Emma and Aubriana and Zoe on a recent Sunday at the Franklin County Airport in Franklin, Vermont. They are all working on building an airplane as part of the Women Build Planes project with Habitat for Aviation. And you heard, I think all of them, if not all of them, at least a couple of them, mention the remarkable person who started the organization. And it turns out she just has a story that you have to hear to believe. And so I had a chance to sit down with Beth White, the founder of Habitat for Aviation. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. It's such an honor to have you here.
It is such an honor to be here. I'm going to start this interview in a really strange place.
Great.
Tell me about your shoes.
Oh, goodness. So I'm wearing, I think they're Mustang logo shoes. They're red and white, and they have a lady on the front that's called Bunny. And they're a company that supports museums and such. And so they just make me feel connected to the women and men who came before us in this industry.
Well, and there must be some trace of irony because the woman that is pictured on this it's a cheesecake pose. It's like the nose of an airplane back in the days when people put women in cheesecake poses on the noses of airplanes.
Yes. It is a stark reminder of how far we have come as women, and from being sort of the mastheads to now the creators of these aircraft and the maintainers of these aircraft and the pilots of these aircraft. So yeah, it is a reminder of those days, and also of the women who came before us and all the barriers they broke, and then still a reminder of how far we have to go.
How did you happen to become the person that founded Habitat for Aviation?
It started with a book called West with the Night I read. It's about the story of Beryl Markham, who is this remarkable human in the 1930s, and she piloted an airplane across the Atlantic going west, and her book is called West with the Night. And I read this memoir, and I said to myself, gosh, if Beryl Markham can fly in the 1930s, how come I can't fly? So I took what's called a discovery flight, and I brought my friend Joanne, and when we landed, I had just read this book called You Are a Badass, Stop Doubting Your Greatness and Start Living an Awesome Life by Jen Sincero. And in it, she talks about really surrounding yourself with people and experiences and things that make your heart sing and that enable you to be the best, most badass version of you, because you're the only you on this planet, and you are uniquely built to contribute to something to this time that you have. And so I turned to Joanne and I said, I'm going to call an airplane into my reality. And having read the book too, she didn't laugh. She just said, well, what color is it going to be? And I said, it's going to be green and white. And then 6 months later, my mom got a call from my middle school math teacher's wife. And before he had passed away, he and his wife had been noticing that I was taking these flying lessons on Facebook and said, I wonder if Beth would be interested in our airplane and our hangar. And so in exchange for helping Jane get a new roof on her barn, I inherited a green and white Cessna 150. And it's a little 2-seater airplane, which I named Charlie after my middle school math teacher. And this hangar here at Franklin County Airport, and my whole life changed. So I had an airplane before I even had a pilot's license. And I learned how to fly in Charlie, and when I got my license, I looked around, and you've been here to the airport. Out of all these hangars, hundreds probably, there was only one who had a woman who owned it and worked out of it. So I decided at that point I was going to change that, and I work for Big Picture Learning, and one of our mottos is one student at a time. So I decided to start with one student at a time. And in Big Picture, what we do is we pair students with experiences around their interests. So we call students the curriculum, and the community is our school. And so we started with one youth, and we got her a full scholarship to get her private pilot's license, which enabled her to shave a whole year off of college. And so one youth at a time, we started with Kyra, and now she's a captain, and only 3% of captains are women. And from that, it just started snowballing. One kid to the next kid to the next. And suddenly, since 2018, we've had 19 youth get their private pilot's licenses before or just after graduating high school. And I was able to do that through Experimental Aircraft Association Chapter 613 and the generosity of George Coy and John Fitzgerald, who own Fly Vermont, because they keep flying very affordable, and the generous nature of all the people in our aviation family. We've been able to raise a significant amount of money to support these young people pursuing their passions.
At what point did you get your pilot's license in the middle of all this?
Yeah, so I think I got my pilot's license about 8 years ago, and I ran into this elder at the airport, and he said, you can work on your own airplane, right? And I was like, no, it's an airplane. And he's like, pull it into my hangar. And he has become one of my closest, most beloved friends. His name is George Coy, and he's the grandfather of Franklin County. And he and I started working on airplanes together, and I started coming up to Franklin County Airport so often. My phone was like, ding, 37 minutes, and with no traffic. Like, it would predict that I was heading up there. And so I started working with my hands, and then I was able to integrate our fellowship program at Big Picture Learning called Harbor Freight Fellowship Initiative, where you pair a youth with somebody who works in the trades, and after they complete a certain number of hours, they get a scholarship. And essentially what we're doing is we are elevating respect for the trades, for people who love to work with their hands, and rewriting that narrative about trades work. And like any good mentor, George was really encouraging me to keep on with my own flying. So you start off with a private pilot's license, so the next thing you go to is an instrument license, which allows you to fly through the clouds. It's, I think, probably one of the hardest licenses to get. It's extremely technical. You have to use all your instruments. You literally wear like this, I called it like a handmaid's tale kind of visor, and it simulates being in a cloud, and you can only look at your instruments. And so that took me about a year, and 2 weeks before my check ride, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. That was a pretty major deviation. And so instead of getting my instrument license, I got on this fast train with good medicine, and I had to undergo 8 rounds of chemo, a double mastectomy, 25 rounds of radiation, and an oophorectomy. And during that time, it was extremely hard, but I had all of this aviation family just pour out of the woodwork and pour their love into me, that I felt like I was the most loved human on the planet. And literally the night, dark night in December, when I had to go for my mastectomy, I was staying with my parents, and we left at like 4:30, 4:45 in the morning, and we were going up and over this hill and down this valley. And at this farm that I've passed for my whole life, there were these people outside, and they had these pink lights, and they had these signs. And they were like, "You got this, Beth. We're rooting for you." And I was like, I've never even met these farmers, but they had heard of my story, and they filed in behind the truck, and they escorted me to the hospital. And my dad pulled out, and he took this quick right instead of going down the hospital road. And I'm like, "Dad, you're going the wrong way." And he came down and around this corner, and I saw 50 trucks all lined up. And my youth aviation folks and friends all out with signs like, "We're beaming love to you." It was this truck parade that was headed by SD Ireland's gigantic cement truck, all lit up. It had breast cancer flags. There was a pink garbage truck. There was a pink oil person truck. Like, all of these people came out during COVID to say, like, "You got this. We have you." And it was just like this most remarkable feeling. And how can you not survive something like invasive ductal breast cancer when you just have all this love and really, really good medicine poured into you? And during those long nights, I had a lot of time to think about what I want written on my epitaph and what mark I wanted to do during this short time I have on the planet. And it just became clear that my passion, it is this marriage between education, aviation, the trades, working with your hands, and building Habitat for Aviation. So George said to me, "Beth, I'm turning 80 in November. How are we going to keep these things going?" And I said, "George, I survived breast cancer. I got this." And that fall, we established Habitat for Aviation.
Well, and it sounds like, in a way, the picture you were painting of all these trucks out there, they sound like they were your runway lights.
Yeah, they were. Our logo for Habitat is this windsock. And if you have ever been at an airport at night, these windsocks are lit up. And they give you a lot of direction. They give you a lot of information about where the wind is coming from. And they also are a signal of home. And these guys were, a signal of like, you are home, you are going in the right direction, you are deeply loved and cared for. We got you, and you got this.
So aside from the realization when you got this hangar that you were the only woman to have a plane in a hangar at the airport, when did the idea that this ought to be specifically targeted towards girls and women come to you?
Yeah, so when I started unpacking the data around specifically the trades and women in the trades, because of my work with Big Picture Learning and Harbor Freight Fellowship Initiative, only 10% of carpenters, for example, are women. I would say that with only 2.6% of aviation mechanics being women, it just became a stark reality that with all of the shortages that we're about to face or are facing, if anybody's ever taken a flight, a lot of delays because there is so many retirees leaving the industry that, in order to open up the doors to the folks who've been underrepresented in the trades, that we really needed a concerted effort. And what better to sort of introduce and help girls see it to be it than having them engage in a real world, authentic project that had real ramifications. We're building a real airplane. It's gotta be correct. We are going to fly it. And as far as we can tell, we're the first in aviation history to have a multi-generational team of all women doing this work together. So it sort of dawned on me that this would be a great opportunity for women and girls to come together and to experience these successes and to come without any skills or knowledge in a really safe and welcoming space and be able to practice these skills to build relationships with one another and people in the industry, and to work on a real project that has a meaning. And so there's meaning and then there's mattering. My boss, Elliot, says you need to have like meaning and mattering in order to have like really powerful learning experiences. And in this hangar, everybody matters. And I tell them constantly, you are necessary and we care. And we're sort of starting to identify and then break down certain barriers that have traditionally kept folks, especially women, from entering these fields.
This is your passion, and it means so much. Do you ever allow yourself the luxury of standing off to the side and looking at what's going on here?
That's a great question. I do love being able to just sort of take a step back and just see the magic that's happening. And I tell people, like, I can try to describe for you what this hangar is, but when you walk through the door, there's a feeling associated with being in this space. I'm sure you could.
I felt it the second I walked in the door.
Yeah, and how do you describe that for folks who haven't been?
The word magic came to mind. Well, so did you recognize as you started doing this that this would be about community in the same way that it's about teaching a trade?
Yeah, I think because I grew up, my whole career grew up based in the big picture learning philosophy, where you have advisories and you have cohorts of people that connect and stay together through all the years that they are in the school. You have folks in our community are powerful teachers. And so we also have to create a situation where people feel safe and connected in order to be pushed beyond their comfort zone and to try new things. And so I think just in my DNA, it's all about creating community. And so that was a very intentional ingredient in the formula of creating Habitat for Aviation.
You mentioned when we walked in the door that until the chemo and the radiation, you had bright red hair. And you would be kind of the spitting image of Rosie the Riveter if not for that.
Yeah, so I was this like really tenacious redhead, and some would maybe call stubborn, but I had this bright, frizzy red hair, and it was so much part of my identity. And I had this very long conversation with death in exchange for my bright red hair, because the chemo stripped it all away. I was able to be gifted this second chance at life, and it's a small sacrifice, although I do miss my red locks. When people say, oh, go talk to that blonde girl over there. I'm like, who are they talking about? Like, I identify as a redhead. And it's just funny, you know, the transitions that we have to face as human beings.
Do you feel like you understand something different about your identity now that isn't as wrapped up in the color of your hair?
I think that the strong, tenacious redheadedness that was me is stronger than ever. And I think there's a lot of stereotypes with redheads, and some of them are true. And I don't think just because my hair is more of a platinum and a tiny little ginger here and there, I don't think the redheadedness nature has left my being, which I'm grateful for.
Your eyebrows are still kind of red. Is the hope that someday this will not be the only either chapter of this or the only program like this that is entirely about girls and women building an airplane?
Yeah, so Habitat for Aviation exists to support the next generation of airplane mechanics and pilots. And this program, which is Women Build Planes, is just one element of what we do. And our intention is to build a world-class facility here at Franklin County Airport where people can come and they can get maybe an avionics training or a pilot's license or a mechanic's license or some of the above, you know, depending on what their passions are. And then folks from around the globe can come and be coached up on how to create these habitats and to make the most of the ecosystems and the resources that they have in their locations to create habitat hubs across the country and maybe in other parts of the world. We have the intention of establishing about 10 hubs in the next couple of years where we reach out to folks who are interested in supporting the next generation of airplane mechanics and pilots so that we can then co-design a 1 or 2 day open hangar event with them so that when we have our plane built in the summer of 29, we can engage in a barnstorming tour that takes us across the country. So our intention is to really, first of all, fly to all the airports in Vermont. We'll even come over to your neck of the woods in the North Country. We love our neighbors to the west.
You could go west with a night.
We could go west with a night. Yes. But we want to have like our pink airplane flying into these airports, and without even saying anything, you see a woman step out, and it's like women build planes, women fix planes, women fly planes. And we have recently applied for this big grant to help offset the cost of that barnstorming tour, and we were so fortunate to have some really powerful partners sign on to this idea. One being the Amelia Earhart family, Beta Technologies, Big Picture Learning. So we just are surrounded by the most amazing support system, and I can't help but see this thing take off. And who wouldn't want a habitat at their airport?
So these girls and women that are building this airplane, not only do you just want it to be successful and successfully fly without, you know, there being mechanical issues. There's a lot riding on this in more ways than one.
Yeah. I think if you were to talk to some of our participants, I've been told that this program has given them a family, has in some cases saved their lives, given them a sense of hope and purpose. And I think what this is enabling us to do is just weaving the fabric of society a little tighter and hopefully making lives better for everyone.
When in all of this stuff that you do you have time to paint? Because we're surrounded by your artwork in here as well.
Yeah, so I love to paint. And this sort of came to me when Big Picture Learning had lost a a grant, and they had to cut my position to half-time, and I was honestly a little peeved. And I'm such a workaholic that I blocked off my calendar and I wrote, Beth is offline. And then because I'm a busybody, I needed to have something to do. So I took this online course about mixed media art, and I watched 2 out of the 12 lessons, and I was like, I got this. And suddenly all this art started pouring out of me. And so I started thinking about all these women in history whose stories maybe haven't been told quite enough or at all. And I started painting their stories, and I have this bizarre mixed media approach where I use old pieces of plywood, and I kind of make a border out of paint that I boil, and so it gets all textury, and then I put down a layer of stamps that are related to that, postage stamps that are related to that topic or the message I'm trying to send. And I can't not do it. It's become kind of like this addiction. And every time I hear this really inspirational story, I put it in my phone, okay, that's my next painting, and that's my next painting. And now I didn't know that you could actually max out a notes app on the iPhone, but I've maxed out an entire notes app of all the paintings I want to do. So now I'm on paintings 2 of my notes apps. And I wish I had a little bit more time. I think if I could wave my magic wand, I would get some more time to do more painting, because it does make my heart super happy.
Well, and between the planes and the people and the paintings, you also have this pink pair of boxing gloves in here.
I do. This is my breast cancer wall. And so these are mementos that folks gave me while I was sick, and to encourage me to go on. And I have these pink Everlast boxing gloves, and I have a skateboard that's going on the breast cancer wall later today. My friend Carrie Duff gave me this beautiful hand-stitched quilt that her grandmother made, who lived in a tar paper shack in New Hampshire. And there's a whole poster of youth and adults that I worked with in Windsor, Vermont, who beamed love to me. And one of my friends hiked up to the top of Mount Shasta with a flag and planted my flag at the top of there. And another friend made these breast cancer horseshoe, bend these horseshoes. He's a farrier. And so, yeah, it's just a small sort of token, a reminder of all that I've been through, and a reminder that we're stronger than we think. And we can get through really hard things. We can do hard things.
Well, Beth White, thank you so much for sharing this story with us.
Thank you so much for coming. I hope you come back.
Beth White is the founder and pilot in charge at Habitat for Aviation, an organization that is teaching young women and girls to build and repair airplanes at the Franklin County Airport in Swanton, Vermont. That's where I met with her and the other folks from Habitat for Aviation on a recent Sunday. You can see some photos and learn more about Habitat for Aviation. Find out how you can join them in their effort to build this airplane at ncpr.org/northwards. And Ethan, we were talking earlier about the chance I had to interview writer Alexandra Fuller, who wrote this really amazing memoir back in the 90s, I think it was, called Don't Let's Go to the Dogs Tonight, and how she had a glow about her. Beth White absolutely has a glow about her, and we talked about this in the interview, but she also has a lot of Rosie the Riveter in her, and almost quite literally. It was. I think it was a life-affirming day that I spent
That's awesome.
in Swanton, Vermont, on this story, and I feel really fortunate to have gotten to share a hangar with these amazing young women, girls, and women of all ages.
I think every single person who pursues a passion like that has a similar glow about them, and I think the people who end up doing the most work never really see themselves becoming that guy or that girl and it just happens to them. And it's like, well, it might as well be, somebody's got to take the first step, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe when she started this group, you know, she didn't know that it would become life affirming or something that would control a big part of her life. And I'm sure that now she's very glad that she made that first step.
Yeah, well, and I think she hoped it would be life affirming. But you know, I think it's just great it's always great to encounter somebody who has found what they're meant to do.
Do you remember your first flight?
I don't really remember my first flight. I was a baby. My folks took me when I was like, I don't know, 6 or 10 months old or something to
what's
Florida.
The first flight that you
remember?
remember?
The first flight, I vividly remember the first flight that I remember. Wow, that made sense.
We got you. It's fine.
We went to Scandinavia when I was 5 years old. And there isn't much I remember about the flight itself, but this is the 1970s, and you know it was a big deal because it was like right after 747s became a thing, and so we got to take this giant Pan Am 747, which I suspect I can't remember. You know, I don't remember the exact itinerary, but I feel like because I was 5 and it was 1974. I feel like we changed planes in London and then flew to Bergen, Norway.
Mm-hmm.
So it was probably a smaller plane. But I do distinctly remember it was the days where you had to walk down the steps to get off the plane onto the tarmac. And, you know, I was this little 5-year-old. And I remember the flight attendant who probably thought of herself as a stewardess in those days, picking me up from the second to last step and like setting me down, you know, like excitedly picking me up and setting me down on the ground and saying, "Welcome to Norway" in her Norwegian accent. And
can you recreate that accent now?
It's like, "Welcome to Norway."
That's exactly what I imagined.
And that is, I'm sure I wrote about that moment in some kind of, you know, school paper. You can hear the air quotes when I was in like first or second grade, but yeah, that's the strongest memory and maybe the earliest memory of flight I have.
My first flight was not super memorable. It was a puddle jumper from Buffalo, New York to Richmond, Virginia, and because I was going to spend a week with family or whatever, not eventful at all. I hate flying.
Well, then you want it to be non-eventful, right?
Exactly. Weren't you and I coincidentally on a flight together?
We were.
It was 2019. Yep, it was 2019. It was the year that I flew out to Arizona for Christmas with my mom, the year that she moved out there, and then flew back, I think, after
Chicago, probably.
Something like that. And then you ended up riding with me from the Ogdensburg airport home?
Yep,
is that right?
I think that is correct.
Yeah, and we had no idea we were going to be on the same flight together. That was a trip from hell. I know that this whole interview is about the magic of flight. It truly is amazing.
Well, the
what
flights
these women
were fine.
Doing.
It was the, you know, these women aren't learning how to fix the baggage claim, you know?
Right. Yeah. That flight or that trip on the way to Arizona,
were you like a day late or something?
I spent literally 24 hours in airports because the cold weather delayed my flight out of Ogdensburg, and then I missed my connecting flight by, I think, like 25 minutes, which is way more infuriating than missing it by 2
Right.
or
If you
3
missed it by
hours.
2 hours, then what are you going to do?
Right. And then I stood in line for literally 3 hours to find another connecting flight. And they were like, "Oh, great. We can get you to San Francisco and that'll connect you to Phoenix, Arizona." What they didn't tell me is that I would have another 6-hour layover in San Francisco, which turned into a 10-hour layover because of more bad weather. And then, I think I started at 5 a.m. and then I ended at about 2 a.m. Arizona time because they're earlier than it was. It was bad.
Which is kind of the length of this episode of Northwards.
And with that, are we done?
We are.
Northwards is an NCPR podcast production. The show is written, produced, and edited by Mitch Tyke with digital production supervision by me. I'm Ethan Shanty. Bill Hanel is our Director of Digital Services. Anna Williams-Bergen is our Digital Projects Specialist. And our theme music is by the Wickmore Jazz Trio of Plattsburgh. To learn more about this program and to make a financial contribution, you can head to ncpr.org/northwards. Did you want to say something flighty like buckle your seatbelts or remain seated while the...
We know that you have a lot of choices when it comes to podcasts, and so we're grateful you chose this one. Have a safe trip.